we don't live in easy times. Yes, there are multiple threats, multiple ways by which humankind can destroy itself. We have wars, we have nuclear threat, which several years ago was just a theoretical possibility, but with the world going crazy, it's not so, like the chances are not zero. We have global warming, we have, if we don't do anything about it, there will be ecological catastrophe within your lifetimes and my probably as well. Social inequality is increasing, which can also cause troubles. And on top of that, there are challenges created by intelligent technologies. So we'll deal with those challenges the whole semester, but if you want to know more, I would recommend this book by Yuval Noah Harari, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And in this book, he basically lists several things in which, for example, polarization rises because of internet bubbles. Truth is becoming very vague concept because, there are fake news, there are many other things. People are disillusioned, job market is uncertain. So there are many ways in which new technologies can, threaten or at least change some former securities for us. So that's something we will try to talk about this semester. And as I said, technologies are not just a technological problem. You are studying at this faculty, which might mean that you will become either IT specialists or physicists or mathematicians or some combinations of those. But some of these problems don't have just technological solutions. They need more because they impact people and they impact societies. And why? First of all, because we are used to believe our own eyes, but the reality in which we live, reality mediated by internet, by smartphones, by technologies, it's reality that is tampered with. It's something that can be, tweaked for us based on various data that are collected. We also know that advances in neuroscience create various gadgets that allow us to tamper directly with the human brain and modify our experience. And also in artificial intelligence, there are technologies that are surprisingly good. And maybe calling them artificial minds is an exaggeration, but they can appear so and will tend to appear so in the next years. So all these things will definitely have impact on people and society. And so let's delve into AI a bit more. So this is probably the form of AI that was made the most popular recent years because of ChatGPT and Gemini and all other generative AI technologies. Maybe also those that can generate images like DALL-E or Stable Diffusion. You probably have heard about deepfakes and about various scandals where you can, create videos of various people doing various things. So that's generative AI, which is very recent but very disruptive technology. Disruptive in the sense that it can change various things. Like, for example, ChatGPT is already changing the way examination works at schools. Even we, used to have essays, used to have written assignments. We just ditched it because it doesn't make sense anymore. It's much better to be interactive and to work together in the class rather than, grading some text product. But there are also other technologies, maybe more like traditional or being with us for longer time, like navigation in the car, route planners, intelligent vacuum cleaners, etc., various assistants. So, what is AI system? Yes, it's better to talk about AI systems because it's, journalists, when they want to get a nice flashy title, they often talk about AI as if it was a person. AI doesn't want to hurt us, or AI wants to kill us, but it's not a single AI, it's, thousands or hundreds of AI systems of basically, as you can see from this definition, systems that are driven by software, and they are intelligent in the way that they have certain level of autonomy, they are adaptive, they can learn from observing people or data, and they can, generate predictions, recommendations, they can decide. And intelligent technologies are then technologies that incorporate such systems. Why is it important? Why we do care about definitions? It's because, as I will talk about later in this lecture, these systems need to be regulated by laws. And if there is a law that regulates AI system, then it has to start with the definition what an AI system is. Otherwise, if you were a producer of a system, would say, oh, this is not AI, this is just, some smart tool, so this law does not apply to me. So in order to prevent that, the good definition is crucial, and this one is from European Union law regulating artificial intelligence, which is called AI Act. There are several others by European Commission, European Parliament, and other bodies, but most of them basically talk about the same things: intelligent behavior, analyzing environments or sensing some inputs, providing some output in taking actions, following some goals, etc. Here are even examples like voice assistant, image analysis, search engines, face recognition, etc., autonomous cars, drones, Internet of Things. So there can be multiple of these definitions. It's not so important like which one we take into account. You can read them offline from the slides. But what they have all in common is that AI system is a human-made thing. In that way, it is artificial. It's able to perform intelligent tasks, whatever we mean by that. It is driven by software. And sometimes it has a physical realization, sometimes it's embodied in something that can perform mechanical actions, and then it is called a robot. So far, so good? It's clear? Okay, thanks. So, a few interesting graphs. I'm sure you cannot read the letters because they are too small, but all these graphs basically show the advances or exponential advance in AI. So the first graph shows the top left is the number of AI publications in the world. This one, bottom left, is number of GitHub AI projects between 2011 and 2022. The top right one is number of computer science exams taken in the world by students. And the bottom one is job advertisements for jobs that include AI, like, for example, machine learning, AI, natural language processing, autonomous driving, and robotics. So also in terms of job markets, there is an increase. And there are other graphs like global corporate investments in AI, that's top left, number of significant machine learning systems by different sectors, number of newly funded AI companies, and number of this one, the bottom right is number of parameters of selected large language and multimodal models, and the scale is logarithmic in both ways. So basically also these models get exponentially larger. There is a small drop at the end, so it looked like an exponential curve, and then there was a small drop. It was because it was the year of COVID, yes? So when we get the new data from 2024 and 5, I guess that the exponential curve will regain its steepness. And what can be expected, that it's not just the amount of technologies, but also the amount of problems they create. There is an organization that started registering issues and different, like bad things that happen, controversies. And also, this is between 2012 and 2021. And also, you can see the exponential number of incidents. And if you want an example, for example, in March 2022, there was a deepfake video released in the internet in which President Volodymyr Zelensky surrenders in the war. And you can imagine how impactful that video could be on morale of people and on many things. So you can do really bad things with, deepfake, for example. So, Stephen Hawking, he's no longer around, but he was a very interesting person and scientist. He said that for all of us, not just scientists, industrialists, and generals, we should ask ourselves, how can we reap the benefits of future AI and avoid its risks at the same time? And this is the most important conversation of our time. So that's also one of my and Tomáš's goal on this course, how to make you aware of the complexity of the situation, but rather than just lamenting how bad it can be, how to take an active approach and how to think about possible solutions. So let's delve into that now. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the involved parties in all this business? On one hand, we have tech developing companies, big ones and smaller ones. We have people and citizens like you and me who basically are impacted by these technologies. Then we have regulators, which are either national governments or some larger bodies like European Union and other world organizations. Then we have academia, scientists, who in the ideal world are advisors for governments to take informed decisions and create good regulations. And then we have the third sector. We have non-governmental organizations and various activists and investigative journalists and all those people who do a very useful job in pointing to problems, discovering problems and pointing to them. So if we start with tech developing companies, by definition, the goal of a company is to make profit. Otherwise, it would cease existing. Yes? And these intelligent technologies are a huge commercial opportunity. There is a competition and there is a race between these competitions. Who will create bigger and better large language model? Who will be earlier with it on the market? It's really like in old times you had arm race. This is a new arm race. And of course, it's very tempting to do it as fast as possible and in this speed to neglect safety and ethical aspects, because it takes time to do things properly, to do risk studies and handle everything. So companies need to have some incentive or be forced to do that. And how they can be forced? So first of all, there is a hard regulation. There is all kinds of laws, also specifying the law enforcement or punishments if someone does not obey the rules. We have also soft regulation where companies are incentivized for good behavior. For governments can decide what they give public funding to. Yes, that's one way how to steer technological progress. And then also supporting infrastructure. If there are trainings that make people aware of ethical issues, that's good. So these are ways how governments can influence this. How can people influence it? Well, public pressure or public opinion is an important thing, and they together can also create pressure because companies care about their public image, at least. Yes. So some time ago in the US, or I don't know if it was like federal law or law of one of the states, but it was obligatory for companies to publish the data about air pollution that they cause. There were no fines for it. They were just obliged to publish the data. And that was enough for them to reduce the emissions because nobody wanted to look as a bad guy. So sometimes even just this soft pressure or information can make wonders. And companies can also, good companies have ethical policies. Sometimes it's meant seriously and honestly. Sometimes it's more a PR thing, but definitely there are ethical policies. On top of that, there can be auditing, like companies can get an external independent auditor to give them some certification about maybe ethical behavior. For example, in Slovakia, now it will be, I think, third year that AI awards are awarded. Companies can subscribe to the contest, describing some of their products and their solutions, and independent panel of experts will evaluate how they handled ethical issues, and someone will get the award. So that's one of the way, for example, how to do it. And also what we can do and what we are doing hopefully right now is integrative education. That means that we don't want to have experts who are narrow-minded, who are perfect engineers, perfect programmers, but don't have a wider context, and vice versa. So it's important that people with technical background have some kind of, ethics or humanities, and vice versa. We are trying to achieve that within cognitive science program, but that was enough of advertising. Some of students from that program are sitting here, which I'm grateful for, but everybody else is welcome as well. I hope this course, it's faculty-wide, so you have a chance to broaden your perspective, hopefully. There are all kinds of political bodies. There is ad hoc expert group at UNESCO. There is a global partnership on artificial intelligence at OECD. Council of Europe has also ad hoc committee on artificial intelligence. European Commission has a high-level expert group on AI, etc. So this situation is taken seriously, and there are measures taken. European Parliament has passed several laws that I will talk about in a minute. But there are also academic organizations or semi-academic combining industrial partners and academic partners. Why it is important? It is important because if the voices are raised by respected scientists who are experts on the field, they will hopefully be taken seriously or have some authority to talk about things. Again, all these links are clickable. When you later download the slides, you can have a look at the details if you are interested. Now, let's talk about ethics and regulation and what's the difference between them. Regulation basically sets the legal rules. They will define what is in accordance with laws and what is against the law. Yes? While ethics deals with the question, what is right, what is ethical, what is morally right. Yes? It's not the same thing. You have things that are not considered ethical, like maybe cheating on your partner, but yet it's not illegal, at least in our society. Yes? And you have several other things where something is illegal, but maybe it's debatable whether it is also morally wrong, and vice versa. But usually regulation, when people create laws, they base it on some kinds of ethical principles. So let's start with regulation. What is legal? As I said, you can have a national governments can pass local laws for different countries, different states, but it's much more effective if some bigger body like European Union creates a law, because, you know, if it's a local law, it's like with taxes. If a global company doesn't like tax rules in some country, they will withdraw and they will go to a different country. Yes. If they don't like the local rules, they can withdraw and go do their business elsewhere. But if it's like on the size of EU is a good partner also for very powerful global companies. And there are several laws. Maybe the one that has been in effect for the longest is GDPR, data protection law, which is really taken seriously, and there are quite big fines. These are fines in millions of dollars or in percents of yearly revenue, whatever is bigger. So you can be fined, let's say, 4% of your revenue, or up to $20 million for some of these breaches of these laws. So that means that also big companies have to take these laws seriously. Ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, it's not a law, it's just a guideline. But in February 2022, Digital Services Act was passed, which is another law which regulates big platforms like YouTube and Facebook, because very often these platforms pretended that we are just platforms, we are not responsible for the content that is there. And, you know, the people who uploaded the content could say the complementary thing. We are not responsible, it's the platform. So in order to reduce the ambiguity and set up some rules, Digital Services Act was passed. And most recent, but maybe most important, and the first in the world, is Artificial Intelligence Act that was passed less than a year ago, and it will take another year or two till it comes fully into effect, because of course you cannot change the law and expect that all the companies will, you know, adapt in a month or so. These are processes that take a long time. So there are, you know, depending on seriousness of issues, there are some periods like within which the companies have to comply with the law. Now a little bit more about this AI Act. It's based on European values, which means that EU is explicitly stating that this is what we consider important values and fundamental human rights, and we will enforce that nobody or no technology is threatening those rights and values. And that's why all the systems are divided into categories depending on how big risk they are for basic fundamental human rights and freedoms. And there's a category called unacceptable risks, and these are systems that directly go against these values, and these are forbidden. These systems cannot be put on market in EU. Then there are high-risk systems, which still have high risks for these values, but on the other hand, they can be very beneficial for the society, and that's why they can be used, but carefully. There is a very long process of creating documentation of all the processes, documentation about how these risks are handled. So companies are obliged to provide the documentation, but if they satisfy all the conditions, these systems can be put on the market and used. Then there are systems categorized as limited risks, and more or less the only risk there is that they will confuse people. Like people can mistake chatbot for a real person, or avatar for a real person, or deepfake for a real event video. So more or less, for limited risk systems, there is just the condition of or obligation to declare that this content is not real. This is fabricated or generated content. And then there are minimal risk AI systems like spam filters and video games with AI features, etc., for which there is basically no regulation. I need to say that this picture is from not the very final version of the law, but I still liked it. But emotion recognition systems are no longer in limited risk category, but can be even in unacceptable risk category. So some details in the fine print has changed, but I will go through them now. So what are unacceptable practices or banned practices because of unacceptable risk? Social scoring for public and private purposes. Social scoring is the thing that maybe is the most well known in China, where you can accrue various points for being loyal citizen, and each time you, let's say, cross the road on the red light and there are cameras with facial recognition, you will get, your points will decrease or your score will decrease. Or, you know, all different kinds of, basically, in essence, one idea is that, yes, you have to be a loyal citizen and obey the laws. The problem is that if it's a country that has elements of dictatorship, being a loyal citizen might mean you have to comply with the regime. And also there are feedback loops in the system that your score can be influenced by with whom you are friends. So if you are in a bad company, if your friends are going downhill, then you will go downhill as well. So for the purposes of this law, of course you have some kind of scoring. For example, bank. If you ask for mortgage or loan, the bank needs to evaluate your credibility, whether you are a trustful client and whether you will repay the loan. Yes, and that is some kind of scoring or crediting. Or if you want to insure your car or your house or whatever, again, there is some evaluation whether you are a risky client or not. But that is the purpose that is directly related to, or the scoring evaluation is directly related to the purpose. But this kind of social scoring is when it's in unrelated context, and basically you have one general number that, you know, will then mean that some services will be denied to you. Like this Chinese system can mean that if you have bad score, maybe you will not be allowed to travel, or you will not get access to healthcare to the same degree, and etc. So there are also like a system of perks and punishments for this. So this is banned in the European Union, this social scoring practice. Then what is also banned is exploitation of vulnerabilities of persons and using subliminal techniques. Like, you know, classical examples is you have a film, but in between frames there is, you know, flickering whatever, Coca-Cola or something, and then, you know, it can be priming you to have taste for buying a drink or something. So this is again banned, and exploitation of vulnerabilities. So especially minors, that means children or people with reduced cognitive abilities. So these are all vulnerable, or even people with like a low economical status. They are vulnerable groups, and someone can try to exploit these vulnerabilities, and this is banned. Real-time remote biometric identification in publicly accessible spaces by law enforcement. This is interesting, and we will have the whole seminar today about this, about facial recognition and biometric identification. This means that it's not legal if someone just, places cameras in public spaces and will just, record the data and analyze faces and do something about it. There are certain exceptions which I will talk about, but in general, it is illegal. Biometric categorization based on biometric data to deduce on infer race, political opinions, trade union membership, religious or philosophical beliefs, or sexual orientation. We know that nowadays data are so rich and data mining algorithms are so good that you can easily deduce these characteristics, even sexual orientation from data, from behavioral data. But this is very sensitive and can lead to discrimination, and that's why it is basically illegal. Individual predictive policing, for those of you who don't know what predictive policing is, that means that police is trying to estimate the risk of people committing some offenses and then restricting their rights based on that. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Minority Report. In that movie, it was not based on AI technology, but on special people with psychic abilities who were able to foresee the future. But nevertheless, police could basically arrest you before you committed the crime because someone predicted that you could or would. Yes? So this is again forbidden, although the data might show such trends. It's forbidden individually. You cannot do it for individual persons. You can do it on an aggregate level. So if, for example, police is monitoring information traffic in the city, and they can evaluate the risk of social unrest or revolution or some bad behavior, they can, for example, send more police forces there, but it's on the aggregate level. But restricting rights of one individual is not allowed by this law. Emotion recognition in the workplace and education institutions, unless for medical or safety reasons like monitoring the tiredness of a pilot in an airplane, etc. Why? Because, each employer wants to optimize use of their employees and could, for example, have systems installed that will try to detect if you're fully concentrated, and if you are not, if you are daydreaming or something, there can be, consequences. Or you can do the same to students. We will have a lecture on emotion recognition, and there are already, systems that can, I would be giving a lecture, and there would be a camera watching your faces and analyzing when you are bored and when you are not listening to me. Maybe just as a feedback for me, which parts of the lecture are boring, but there is a potential of consequences against you as well, and that's why this is not allowed for workplace and education. So that's where emotion recognition has basically moved from limited risk to almost like banned practice in certain contexts. And also untargeted scraping of internet or CCTV cameras for facial images. So it's not allowed to just build large databases of faces without consent of those people. Then we have high-risk systems. And for high-risk systems, in general, they also have to comply with safety regulations, as any other product that wants to be on European market has to come through safety certification. But also, there are additional requirements, like, management and systems that are operating or managing critical infrastructure, systems for education and vocational training, employment and worker management, which means, for example, if you have systems that automatically select applicants for either study or work, law enforcement, migration, asylum and border control management, assistance in legal interpretation and application of the law. Why are all these sectors high risk? Because there is a power dynamics. There are people who have almost no power, like migrants, and then there is state or some organization that has power over them, and that's why if there are AI systems in place, it has to be ensured that they are not abusing the rights of these people. And then, as I said, there are transparency requirements for limited risk systems where it will be compulsory that such content has to be marked. It has to be disclosed that this content was generated by AI. The only two exceptions from this, I think, are when it is a part of artistic performance and it would spoil the game. So in that case, it is revealed, but only after the performance. Or if it's part of a police investigation, like if you have an agent, trying to elude something from someone. These special cases, like also, for example, using facial recognition system for searching for kidnapped people or searching for terrorists, I said there are exceptions, but these exceptions need to have a permission from judge, like usually like when you need a warrant to enter someone's house and search. So similar restrictions are also around use of these technologies in exceptional cases. So that was the first part about the regulation. Before I go to ethics, please feel free to ask questions, but also be aware that this lecture is recorded. So if you don't want to be in the recording, then ask questions afterwards when the recording is off. Otherwise, feel free to jump in anytime. So far so good? Okay. So this was about regulation, but regulation, as I said, is usually based on ethics. And bad news is that there is not just one kind of ethics. You have different ethical frameworks, and you can even come to different conclusions about whether something is moral or ethical or not. And roughly, there are three groups of ethical frameworks. One is consequentialist, which means we are basically interested in the effect on people or on something. Yes. So it's not important whether you had bad motive or good motive or what did you intended, what did you intend, but the actual impact is important. Yes. And impact on whom? I can either optimize impact on myself, and that is egoist consequentialist theory, or I can optimize the benefit for other people, then it's altruist theory, or I can try to optimize the benefit for the largest amount of all the stakeholders, and then it's classical utilitarianism. On the other hand, we have deontological theories, which basically say that we have given principles, and whatever is in accord with these principles is okay, and whatever is against them is immoral. I'll give you an example. Let's say we have a commandment or rule or law, do not steal. So if you operate in deontological theories, then stealing is bad, period. It's always bad, regardless of context. But if you are consequentialist, let's say you have a hungry mother who wants to save lives of her children who would otherwise starve to death and would steal a loaf of bread, let's say from the shop where they have lots of loaves of bread. So according to deontological theories, stealing is always immoral regardless of the context. According to consequentialist theory, maybe saving lives of children is more important than, economical damage to the owner of the shop in the value of one loaf of bread. Yes, so that's what I said, that sometimes you can have one principle or one context, one use case, but different conclusions. And there's also a third type of ethics, and that's called virtue ethics. In that type, basically, you think about an ideal virtuous person, and you are asking the question, how would that virtuous person behave in this situation? For example, and we will get to it, is it moral or immoral to violently kill people in video games, or even bringing it to more extreme, torturing children in video games, or raping people in video games? Yes. So you can think about it in a consequentialist way. What's the impact on people? Maybe it will. Maybe if they kill or use violence in simulator, maybe it will sort of prime them to be less sensitive to violence or more violent in real life. But that's a matter of empirical research. It could be also true the opposite, that if some people can, discharge their impulses in virtual reality, they don't have to do it in actual reality. So this is an empirical question, like what's the impact on the people? Another question would be, what's the impact on the virtual characters in the game itself? But if we for now believe that these characters are just pixels, there is no sentience, no consciousness, then we don't have to deal with that. So that's consequentialist approach. But if we are in virtue ethics, you could also ask, what kind of person would torture children? What kind of person would rape women, even in simulation? Would virtuous person do it? So these are I'm just trying to give you examples, because this can be one of the questions on your exam, that you will be given a scenario and you will say, now analyze it from the point of view of virtue ethics, or analyze it from the point of view of utilitarian ethics, or deontological ethics. So let's, for now, talk about utilitarian ethics, because that's the approach that is very often taken in practice. Utilitarian ethics prefers actions that try to bring the best consequences for the largest number of involved people, of the stakeholders. But what are the best consequences? Maybe, reducing suffering, bringing happiness over unhappiness, pleasure over pain, equality over inequality. But that's already not a neutral question, that's already a question of values, because why do we, or how do we know that pleasure is better than suffering? Yes, or there can be situations in which you would want to sacrifice yourself for some higher goal or something. So it's always the question of values, and we will spend the whole seminar next week thinking about your values and discussing them. But for now, let's stick with the theory, and I will talk about values in humans, because we can also try to think about AI systems and whether and how to instill some values in them, so that when these systems have to take decisions which have ethical consequences, so that they do it in accordance with our values. But that's again the topic for the next week. So, is there a consensus on values for AI systems? This is again empirical question, and there's this report by Berkman Klein Center from 2020, where they try to look or create a meta review of all kinds of efforts in this area. And again, you probably can't read those letters, but this is a time axis from 2016 till 2020 probably, and the listed are all kinds of initiatives, whether governmental, non-governmental, private sector, civil society. So usually some people convene and they come up with some charter or document of values that then they base ethical frameworks on. So this just shows how many of them there were in these 5 years. And when they analyzed the authors of this report, they tried to find like some common ideas or cluster them according to their meaning, let's say. And they found that there are clusters like values around privacy, around accountability, safety and security, human control and human autonomy, professional responsibility, fairness and non-discrimination, transparency, explainability. So there are some patterns because, if it's the same field, then there should be sort of similar conclusions. So one of the bodies, high-level expert group at European Commission in 2019 came with a document called Ethics Guidelines for Trustworthy AI, and that's one of the many documents that were on 2 slides back. And trustworthy AI should be 3 things. Lawful. So first of all, it should respect and comply with all applicable laws and regulations. On top of that, it should be ethical. So even if something is probably not yet regulated, it should avoid unethical consequences. But it should also be robust, because you can have a system that is trying to be ethical, but yet technically it's crappy and it puts its users in risk. So these are like general principles, but if we go into detail, then there were maybe 7 areas in which the systems could be ethical. And one of them is human agency and oversight. So that means that AI systems are here not to, take over control, but they are here to empower human beings, to allow them to make informed decisions and foster their fundamental rights. And at the same time, proper oversight mechanisms need to be ensured, which can be achieved either through human in the loop or human on the loop, and human in command approaches. The difference between in the loop and on the loop is that in one process the human is part of the chain of decisions and has to actively decide, while if it's human on the loop, it's only supervising the decision that can be automated, but human has a way to interfere if something goes wrong. Technical robustness and safety, I think that does not need an explanation. Privacy, transparency. Transparency is also a technical problem because nowadays the AI systems are so big and they are basically billions of numbers that is very hard to interpret by humans. So it's also a technical problem, but it's also a political problem, because let's say you apply for university and you get a response that you were not accepted, and then you ask, well, why? What's the ground for not accepting me? And you will get a response, because our algorithm said so. No transparency. And people have a right to have a justification. They have the right to appeal against such decisions. Very often such systems are proprietary. Nobody knows how they operate, so it's really hard to justify those decisions. But still, if there are systems that have serious consequences for people's happiness or people's life and rights, then people have the right to get the explanation. Diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness. There will be a lot about this in the lecture on big data, but basically it should be ensured that these systems are or affect in equal ways different groups of people, regardless of their economical status, of their gender, age, and other things. You have probably experienced it that during COVID, all the education and most of the businesses switched to online very quickly, but it's quite a difference if you are a family with good economical status and you have fast internet and each of your children have their own laptop and you and your partner have your own laptops, rather than when you come from low economic status family and you have maybe one computer in the whole family and maybe one smartphone or something like that. So that makes it much harder for some groups to, just participate in whatever technological solution is provided. So this point is about that, about making fair access and fair impact of these systems. Societal and environmental well-being. We should not think about just today, but also about future and try to create solutions that are sustainable. Again, for example, nowadays there are so much data that needs to be stored somewhere that these data centers that just have, disks and backups of data, they consume huge amount of energy. Not talking about, for example, training large neural networks like large language models. It's very environmentally unsustainable. Another example is Bitcoin mining. It's so expensive that just to make you aware that you can create pollution not just by not separating your physical rubbish, but also by the amount of data that is stored and produced every day. And most of that data is crap anyway. It's spam and stuff like that. Accountability means that it must be clear in every moment if some damage is caused, who is responsible and who is liable and who will pay for the damage. Yes, imagine that you have a self-driving car killing someone on the street. Then is it the responsibility of the owner of the car, of the manufacturer of the car, of the car itself? So there are different options how this can be handled. Okay. It might seem very complex at the moment, but don't panic. It's always good to pause, to slow down, and to reflect. And maybe you have heard that ChatGPT was released to public in November 2022. And in March 2023, there was a big call of many respected scientists to pause the arm race between companies that are developing these models for half a year and rather redirect the resources to studying their safety, security, and impact on the society. It did not happen. The progress did not stop, but still it was a very important call that safety, security, and impact on the society has to be taken seriously, and that it's good to dedicate some resources to it. So, as I said, creating good AI is not just a technological problem, it's a political problem, because if it has to be in accordance with some values, then someone must say what these values are. Or we as a society have to agree on those values. EU has it clear. EU has made its values explicit, and basically it's fostering human dignity, acknowledging cultural diversity, serving public interests, and strengthen shared social responsibility. And there are several dimensions of how humans can flourish. One dimension is how can these technologies help us to self-develop, to realize our dreams, to become more than we are. Also supporting human agency, supporting us in what we can do, what we can achieve, and also how we behave as a society towards each other. Of course, when you regulate something, that means that maybe you will not allow all possible uses. Some uses, as you saw in the AI Act, maybe will be forbidden. Some will be highly regulated and will place a huge burden of documentation and extra technological processes to ascertain safety and being compliant with all the values that are protected. So if we think about how AI is used, we should look at opportunities that it provides us. But if AI is not used where it could for the benefit, then it brings some opportunity costs, something that we could have gained but haven't. But if AI is overused or misused, then it also brings costs. And these costs are from the harm that it causes. So what are our opportunities? We can strive to have systems that will improve the quality of life. We can strive to have systems that will allow fairer distribution of resources. It's no secret that there is the Western developed world where most of the resources are concentrated, and then there is developing world, or sometimes called Global South, where more of the impacts are concentrated. Not so much profits, but impacts, like effects of global warming, for example. So it would be great if costs and benefits were distributed more fairly. And etc. Now, I want to also talk about some tools that can help us to assess these things. Because imagine, it's easy if we are, well, maybe even that is not easy if you will be sitting on your exam and trying to analyze the system. But now imagine you found a startup and you are, creating some AI system, some smart idea that you want to sell and become rich. And how would you know that, am I doing it in an ethical way? What will be the consequences? Will I damage people's lives or will I help people's lives? So for that, there are several inventories and checklists and assessments tools that hopefully maybe we will also try to apply practically in one of the seminars during this semester. And one of them comes from these recommendations of high-level expert groups that I already mentioned, and it basically has a checklist alongside these 7 aspects that I mentioned. It's called ALTAI, Assessment List for Trustworthy Artificial Intelligence. And at the end of the slides, there are clickable links again to the webpage where you can interactively play with the tool and use it. Then you are still in your early stage as students, but maybe one day you will become PhD students or researchers. And if you want to apply for European money, again, there is a very strict ethics self-assessment. And of course, there are different dimensions of ethics, like are you using stem cells or, working with human embryos, or are you, working with animals, or there are different dimensions, but one of the dimensions is Does your activity involve the development, deployment, and or use of artificial intelligence-based system? And if yes, then you are already opened the can of worms and you have to go through the assessment, which has, for example, these questions. Well, first one is already that I mentioned, whether you are using AI or not. Then, could your AI-based system potentially stigmatize or discriminate against people based on sex, race, ethnic or social origin, age, genetic features, disability, sexual orientation, language, religion or belief, membership to a political group, or membership to a national minority? Does your system interact, replaces, or influences human decision-making process? For example, affecting human life, health, well-being, human rights, or economic, social, or political decisions? Does your system have the potential to lead to negative social and environmental impact, either through intended application or plausible alternative use? So even if you say, well, my system is intended for this, but it will be obvious to everyone that it can be directly taken and misused for something else, then you are also responsible for that misuse. Does your activity involve using of AI in a weapon system? And the rubbish bin point does basically everything else. Does your AI raises any other ethical issues? So if you want to get European money, you will have to answer those questions. This is what I already mentioned. Then there is this interesting paper that we have a large European project about trustworthy robots. So robotics is especially relevant for us in the Department of Applied Informatics. But this paper is interesting in the sense that it says, well, everybody wants to do good, but we differ in what we understand by good. And so this paper, for example, comes with another interesting set of questions. How did you come up with a definition of good for your project? And what specific societal goods it will lead to? Or what is it actually good for and what it is not good for? And in what ways? And how do you measure whether it is good? Which stakeholders were involved in the design? And what are limitations? What your system cannot do? What are the potential negative consequences of the robot? What structures need to be put in place to protect against those negative consequences? And by whom? That's also an important question. Have you protected the users against the potential harms of the robot? And how and to what degree do you make the capabilities, limitations, and potential consequences and biases of the robot transparent to specific audiences? So, are you not deceiving people about capabilities of your robots? For example, let's say you are designing a robot that will be helping elderly people in homes for elderly people, yes, or in hospitals, etc. And there is another tool called Huderia, and that's a special methodology for assessing the impact on human rights and democracy. And another tool created by Dutch government. So I will not go into details. Feel free to have a look at the slides in your own time if you are interested in more detail. If not, then I guess this level of detail might be sufficient for the purposes of this course. And I will go into the very last part of my lecture, and that is malpractices in AI ethics. So, okay, we have AI ethics, but maybe there are ways how to, navigate this landscape and bypass some regulations or tweak them. So let's focus now on this. One typical malpractice is called digital ethics shopping. And that means that rather than first declaring what are the principles that you want to obey, and then designing your system according to the principles. You can first design your system and then shop for different ethical frameworks and handpick those principles that your system is in accordance with. Yes, so it's like post hoc or posteriori making your system comply with selected rules and ignoring the rules that it does not comply with. So this is called ethical shopping, and it's a malpractice. Another malpractice is called ethics blue washing, and the name comes from analogy to greenwashing. Greenwashing means that usually companies who are big polluters or cause damage to environment, they might invest a lot of their PR and a lot of advertisement to appear greener than they are, just pretending that how much they care about environment and etc. So this is similar, but it's about AI ethics. So you can have companies that, for example, create an ethical policy or ethical board, but in reality they don't mean it seriously. They just want to pay a lip service and to appear more ethical than they are. Digital ethics lobbying is basically trying to hinder the legislation process or enforcement by exploiting loopholes and navigating the weak points of digital ethics in order to basically avoid responsibility. Digital ethics dumping. Again, the name comes from dumping, known from business, where you can dump products or export products to different markets. This means that let's say in European Union some practices are banned. Let's say whatever, genetic modification of human embryos, or I'm just making it up, but something like that. And let's say if you cannot do it in EU, you will do these experiments in some African country or South American country where there is no legislation that would protect people against it. You would do your research there, and you would then import the results of your research back to EU. So basically avoiding the law and doing the things that are forbidden somewhere where it's not forbidden. That's ethics dumping. And it's actually happening. There's a lot of research on neural implants, and some of this research was done. Now I don't remember if it was Colombia or Venezuela or one of these countries, and it basically led government to change the constitution to protect the rights of people for integrity of their brains, because in that country many people were poor and they basically sold themselves for experiments which could have unexplored consequences, because it's new research, so nobody knows how much damage it can cause. So this is also an example of ethics dumping. Ethics shirking means you start big, you start with good intentions, but over time they will erode and it will become less practical and more expensive, and that's why you might come with applying double standards on yourselves and other people. So these were malpractices because these are practices that people do on purpose, that they want to avoid responsibility. There are also some pitfalls, which means that these are not necessarily driven by bad intentions. These are just things that happen if people are not careful enough. One of the pitfalls is that we can have these grand ideas and ideals and basically get lost in theoretizing and failing to deliver the action. Also, now we live in an AI hype times, And that might mean that intelligence, whether artificial or natural, is what is the most important thing for progress of humanity, but it doesn't have to be so. Questions of values, of meaning of life, of human biology, of human embodiment can get ignored if we focus too much on smart solutions. Also, we can be, flooded with the complexity or startled by the complexity of the domain. So there's no need to solve everything at once. It's good to start small and start with use cases. We can also have different expectations. For example, we can have double standards, like we might require that self-driving cars never harm or kill anyone on the roads, and we know that human driving cars kill people every day in huge quantities. So it's good to sort of be fair in the expectations we have. We need to constantly remind ourselves that AI ethics is not an engineering problem, that we will need ethicists, philosophers, psychologists, economists, social scientists, all those people who might help us to work in this, and lawyers as well, in this domain of impact on the society. And the last one is that if we have nice ethical boards for everything and ethicists, we might come to think that it's their job and not mine. I'm just an engineer. I create these nice AI systems and let ethicists care about the consequences. It's not always good, because maybe you as an engineer or someone who develops these technologies or designs them, you might be the only one who understands the technical details, and the ethicist will not even be able to comprehend the problem. And that's why it is important that everybody has this ethical awareness. And it's been shown that maybe what we are doing here right now, that we have a special course dedicated to impacts of technologies or AI ethics or whatever we want to call it, it's the first step, but it's much better if ethics become part of every course. It's because you can again get the impression that Wednesday from 4:30 till 6 I'm ethically aware, and then I go out of this lecture room and then I forget about it for the week. Yes, so it's much better that if you have a course on databases, for example, that part of this course talks about data privacy and other issues. So wherever it is appropriate, it should be part of this course, and in this way, ethics will become part of everyday life, not just a specific course or specific boards. And here at the end are a few resources for the tools that I mentioned. And I will end with a long list of recommended literature. These all are not strictly, scientific publications. This is more like a popular science, or these are books for wider audience. But because of that, they are more accessible. And if you're interested, it might make sense for you to read them. So I think this was my last slide. So thank you very much.